from PIB Bangalore ना? है? अच्छा, so no, from which team have you come? है? Who has hired you? PIB or from G20? अच्छा, Prakash, is he your team? Photographer is from? चलो कोई बात नहीं, करो करो करो, नो वरी. He's from? अच्छा ठीक है, he's from G20, ठीक है. Actually, technically we have already done with the minister, so I will just in Bangalore we are having this media briefing for the first environment. बस 2 ही लाइन बोलूँगी मैं, आपको ही करना है काम.
मैं बस टेक्निकलिटी समझने की कोशिश कर रही थी क्योंकि मिनिस्टर ने तो कर दिया.
हाँ हाँ हाँ, ये क्या है कि अगर people को डिजिटल है ना, उनको तो कुछ तो इवेंट करना चाहिए. वो लोग जैसे मैं जो बताया कि सिटी में इसका मॉडल ये तुम देखो तो क्या है. अब ऐसे तो भी कुछ तो इवेंट करना नहीं, तो मैं इसको कह रही हूँ मैं कहता हूँ कि मैं मंथली में कल भी DG फर्स्ट इज रेडी टू डू, हम कल कर लेते हैं, बट नाउ योर कॉस्ट आर हैपनिंग, बट वी हैव टू टेक अप. कभी का मंथली में भी तो 10 को भी कुछ नहीं है. नमिता को मेरे को रिक्वेस्ट करनी पड़ती. Navita is going to kill me. Tomorrow's ना. अभी सुनो मेरी बात. I have to look at my stakeholders. अरे उसको तो मैंने उसको बहुत डांटा. मैंने कहा तुम तो भाग रहे हो. But he is managing everything very well. But in Jodhpur, we had this guy who was all the time, जैसे श्रीचंद था ना अभी, but poor guy, he is exhausted now. इतना एनर्जी पावर. चलो ठीक है, डन. फिर परसों करते हैं. मैम का साथ 10th को और 11th दोनों कर रहे हैं. देखते हैं. लेटर कम टुमारो देन. ठीक है, ओके, एग्री. आई एम श्योर दे गोइंग टू सेंड सम मिनिस्टर, देखना. शास्त्री में नहीं, मैं नेशनल मीडिया सेंटर, NMC. ये जो 2 फोटोग्राफर्स हैं ना, ये आपकी टीम के हैं. तो इनको बोलो ये फोटोग्राफ सारी डालेंगे कहाँ, भेजेंगे कहाँ? EMC कंपनी कौन है? उसको बुलाओ, उसको बुलाओ. यू आर द पार्ट ऑफ द EMC टीम ना. तो ये जो फोटोग्राफ्स खींच रहे हैं ना, ये सारे हमारे, यू आर द पार्ट ऑफ द एग्जीक्यूटिव मीडिया ग्रुप. So how will these photographs reach us? To whom will they give? Give it to you, give to you. And how, who will you give to? हाँ तो वो हाँ. नहीं नहीं, मुझे एक पर्सन बताओ, उसको हम मीडिया ग्रुप में ऐड करेंगे, ऑफिशियल मीडिया ग्रुप में. No, he will then share the pictures. Google, तो उस, you take my number 981060 7500 Mattu JP Singh, ADG PIB. Just share that name of the person who is to be added to the group and the Google Drive. ठीक है, इसी नंबर पे मुझे आप व्हाट्सएप करो. Hello, yes. Yeah. Okay, okay, okay. I have you messaged me? Acha, I'm in. Please message me again. I'm in Bangalore. I will just do the needful. Okay. हाँ. We'll just see what to do. ठीक है. आप मैसेज करो. Patil, are we good to go? Huh? We have got more people can join us. We will start. Everybody is here. Okay. And from radio somebody is come? नहीं कोई बात नहीं, चलो we are going to start now, right? Welcome friends to this media briefing in Bangalore. As you all are aware, we are having this first we are having this first environment, climate, sustainability working group meeting here. And with us is Additional Secretary, Ms. Richa Sharma, who will give you a brief detail about the schedule of meetings and what is going to happen in the next 3 days in Bangalore. We will have a PPT first and then we'll open for the questions. If you have any questions, you can ask her later. And we begin with the PPT. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I welcome all of you to this briefing. As you're aware, India has taken over the presidency of the G20 since December 2022 and will have this presidency till end of November 2023. Over 200 meetings will be held across the length and breadth of the country in over 50 cities. The G20 meetings are now in full swing, and the city of Bengaluru has already seen meetings of the working groups under the Sherpa track. Now, work of the G20 is organized under the Sherpa track and something known as the finance ministers and the central bank governors track. Under the Sherpa track, there are different themes which are discussed in different working groups. Agriculture is discussed, energy is discussed, environment issues are discussed, anti-corruption issues are discussed. Every theme is led by a different nodal Government of India ministry. This ministry, which is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, is responsible for convening the meetings of the Environment and Climate Sustainability Working Group. This group, as you can imagine, is a group that will discuss the most pressing global environment and climate change issues of the day. Now, this is an opportunity for the Indian presidency to steer and shape the global discourse and response to issues of pressing challenges such as the loss of biodiversity, the building up crisis of climate change, as well as the issues of land degradation, amongst others. G20 is, as you're aware, is a group of countries, some of the largest emerging and as well as the developed economies. Altogether, the G20 countries account for 85% of the global GDP, but they are also responsible for 80% of the annual greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, it follows that coming together of the G20 to evolve a consensus and policy coordination on what should be done to tackle these issues is very, very important. And this is an opportunity for India to steer the discussions around some very important themes that we intend to do across the working group meetings. Now, some of these challenges is what we have tried to project briefly on this slide. The issue of resource extraction repeatedly, its use in producing products, but then wastage of those those important resources at the end of life of those products in terms of waste is a problem, because the earth has only a finite resource space. If extraction continues unabated without utilizing the end of life materials, then the ability of this earth to sustain sustained would be impacted quite badly. Ocean warming, sea level rise, and ocean acidification are problems. They threaten the global GDP, half the global GDP of about 44 trillion. Therefore, under our presidency, we have taken up the issue of a sustainable and climate resilient blue economy to steer discussions on this important theme. Loss of biodiversity is of course challenging, and we have shown here in this third bullet that there is already a 69% decline in monitored populations of vertebrates. India is a signatory to the Convention on Biodiversity, and issues of biodiversity loss and how to conserve and enhance biodiversity will be a big part of the discussions during the Indian G20 presidency. Of course, climate change and lifestyles for environment are key cross-cutting themes that will be discussed in the working group meeting. You are aware that the Honorable Prime Minister at COP26 in Glasgow had given the mantra of lifestyles for environment. Since then, India has already included lifestyles for environment, which means the need for making responsible and sustainable choices in our lifestyles and in our production and consumption patterns into our nationally determined contributions, which means the climate targets which India has posed to the UNFCCC. Then the Honorable Prime Minister, in the presence of the UN Secretary General, has launched Mission Life, which is Lifestyles for Environment. Therefore, in India's G20 presidency, the issue of sustainable lifestyles will be discussed not only in this working group, but in many other working groups also, such as the development working groups. So lifestyles for environment and climate change are cross-cutting themes under the Indian presidency. The approach which the Indian presidency seeks to adopt is integrated, it will be comprehensive, and we want to drive a consensus, we want to have a consensus-driven process. What this really means is that it will bring together different relevant ministries on the common platform, along with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Ocean related issues, the nodal ministry in the Government of India is the Ministry of Earth Sciences. For water related issues, it's the Ministry of Jal Shakti. But when we speak of the environment, all these ministries come together with us to lead the discussions in the G20. Our approach is also that we do not look at climate change, biodiversity and land degradation in silos, but we believe that we need to discuss them together and how they impact each other. We also want to adopt a consensus-driven and a participatory approach, which means that India as the presidency brings issues for discussion on the table. Different G20 countries present their views on the same, and it is then the responsibility of the Indian presidency to ensure that the outcomes of this whole process are ambitious, they have been developed through a consultative process, and that they are adopted by all the G20 countries. And I will be discussing about the outcomes that we expect from the Environment Climate Sustainability Working Group in the following slides. So I have already mentioned that we intend to leverage Mission Life to define a new sustainable and resilient development paradigm for the G20 countries. Now, there are three key environmental concerns that we will address during the course of the Environment Climate Sustainability Working Group. The first one is about the urgent need to arrest land degradation, biodiversity loss, and restore ecosystems. So 23% of the global land area is no longer productive for agricultural use. It has been rendered waste, degraded because of various issues. It could be due to mining, it could be due to deforestation, but land degradation is a problem. Then biodiversity, there's a 68% fall in the population of mammals, birds, amphibians, etc., which has been listed here. The second concern that we proposed to address is about promoting a sustainable and climate resilient blue economy. By blue economy, we mean various activities such as fisheries and aquaculture, shipping and ports, tourism, beach tourism, offshore wind, mining for minerals from sand, for example, deep sea mining. So there are many activities that are covered under the blue economy. Now, livelihoods are dependent in a big way on the oceans. Oceans are an important source of sink. They function as sinks for carbon dioxide, which means that they sequester CO2. However, because of pollution, because of over extraction and unsustainable ways of using its resources, already the sink action of the ocean is getting impacted and reduced. So therefore, we want to be able to discuss these problems within Indian G20 presidency and hope to arrive at certain high-level principles that would promote a resilient and a sustainable blue economy across the G20. The third issue, which is extremely important, is about encouraging resource efficiency and circular economy. And this is about, not to extract resources at levels where the regenerative capacity of the earth is being impacted. We will have 4 meetings at different venues over the course of this year, which means between February till July, we will have 4 meetings. So the first meeting is now here in Bengaluru till 11th. The next meeting will be in Gandhinagar. The third meeting will be in Mumbai, and the fourth meeting will be in Chennai. So every meeting will have a dedicated side event. For example, the side event for the Bengaluru one is on land degradation by ecosystem restoration. That's the focus. At the Gandhinagar meeting, the focus would be on water resources. At the Mumbai meeting, the focus would be on ocean-related discussions, and we would hold a G20 Oceans Dialogue at there. We will also have a very big coordinated beach cleaning event that will happen on 21st of May in different cities in different coastal states and UTs, but also across all the G20 countries in a synchronized manner. Our last meeting of the working group will happen in Chennai, and it is at Chennai that all the environment and climate ministers of all the G20 countries would gather to adopt a ministerial declaration, which is the eventual outcome of the work across these 4 working groups. So the ministerial will happen in Chennai. So India already, the meetings of these working group also provide an opportunity to share our learnings, our progress and our experiences with different G20 countries. And you're aware that India has made much progress across all of these pillars. And the discussions and the side events would provide us an opportunity to share our experiences, but also to learn from the experiences of others for the collective progress on global climate and environment goals. We are on track to meet the national biodiversity targets. You are aware that already 24.62% of India's geographic area is under forest and tree cover. The Ramsar sites, which means wetlands of international importance, that number is increased to 75. And whereas the numbers stood at about 16 in 2014. So this shows the importance that the government of India is according to wetlands protection, and wetlands are extremely important for biodiversity, climate and water regulation. In the blue economy, India is already, developing a national marine litter policy, as well as developing a framework for blue economy. There are many waste management rules that we have already put in place, and many conservation activities, schemes and programs for mangroves, coral reefs and endangered species are already being implemented. In circular economy and resource efficiency, you are aware that Mission Circular Economy was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister in 2021. And this ministry, the Environment, Forest and Climate Change Ministry, has brought in several waste management rules. And in terms of circular economy and resource efficiency, the idea is that precious resources which are embedded in products such as this, for example, when this product reaches its end of life, it could just go into a landfill, and the very precious resources that are embedded in this they are wasted. So this is a linear model in which we extract, we manufacture a product, we use it, and we throw it at its end of life. So a move to a circular economy means at the end of life we are able to extract the resources, embedded resources from this product, and plow it back into the manufacture of the same product or any other products. In this process, we reduce the pressure on resource extraction, which would otherwise continue unabated. So this ministry has formulated many waste management rules that are, those are about not only about plastics, but also about battery waste, about biomedical waste, about e-waste, electronic waste, etc. have been notified. That is extended producer responsibilities, and the producer pays principles have also been integrated into the waste management rules. By this slide, we want to say that the issues that we intend to discuss, India as a country has much to share. So every working group, whether it is the Environment, Climate, Sustainability Working Group or other working groups, must arrive at certain eventual outcomes. So those outcomes are typically in the form of high-level principles or platforms, or they are frameworks, policy frameworks. So they can take many different forms. So we hope to adopt a G20 framework to combat land degradation and recommendations to G20 countries in this priority area. We also hope to develop a G20 online knowledge and solutions exchange platform for land restoration projects. But all of this outcome is to be supported through certain technical work. So we also will publish certain G20 studies on restoration of abandoned mine sites, on forest fire impacted areas, and best practices for integrated planning and sustainable management for water resources. As I mentioned earlier, the Ministry of Jal Shakti is a very important partner for the Environment, Climate, Sustainability Working Group. From the second track on oceans and blue economy, we want to develop G20 principles for a sustainable and resilient blue economy, and we also will convene the Oceans 20 dialogue at Mumbai. The outcomes that we expect from the circular economy theme are to develop a knowledge exchange on circular economy in the steel sector to improve circular economy and resource efficiency. We also want to develop a knowledge exchange on extended producer responsibility for circular economy, then on circular bioeconomy, and a global resource efficiency and circular economy industry coalition. Obviously, these outcomes would depend on the skill of the Indian presidency to steer the discussions, build consensus, and then of course do all the technical work that is needed to get the consensus and acceptance of the G20 countries on this. There has been very extensive interest. We have said that we encouraged all the G20 countries, the guest countries, and the international organizations to join our meetings physically. Many G20 countries, previous G20 countries were unfortunately impacted by the pandemic, and therefore those G20 meetings were, held completely in a virtual mode or in a hybrid mode. Now, with the Indian presidency has encouraged physical participation, and I'm so glad to share with you that we've had a wonderful response. We already have over 142 delegates from member countries, guest countries, and international organizations that are joining us in Bengaluru for the meetings that will start from tomorrow. So we have 96 from the 19 member countries. The 20th is India itself, obviously, plus the European Union. Then we have 25 delegates coming from 10 guest countries, and we have 21 members coming from 7 international organizations. And we have listed, just for your information, CDRI is the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, FAO, International Solar Alliance, and the others are UN agencies that are the international organizations. And India has invited a large number of guest countries to the G20 presidency, and we are very glad that most of them will be joining us for the meeting. In fact, all of them, because we already have representation from all 10 guest countries. And so participation is very, very important, because when you have participation from all, it means that your work will be consensus driven and participatory. If it was only a subsection of countries that were coming, then for the outcomes, we would not have been able to say that this was, it was developed through a participatory way. So at Bengaluru tomorrow, we will start our meeting with a side event. So a first day of any meeting starts with a side event. That the focus of that side event is on restoration of degraded landscapes. As I have shared with you that due to mining or other reasons, landscapes tend to get degraded. Now, landscape could be a terrestrial landscape, it could be a aquatic landscape. So restoration of degraded landscapes is the theme for discussions tomorrow. There will also be a thematic site visit to the Kalkere Arboretum and the Banerghatta National Park. So for those people who are already, who are from Karnataka and especially from Bengaluru would already know what is the uniqueness of this Kalkere Arboretum. But for those who are not aware, in the following slide, I will display briefly what is it that we want to show the delegates at this Arboretum. There will also be a visit to the Banerghatta National Park. Then on 10th February, we have the technical work will start with first on biodiversity and land degradation. Post-lunch session would be a technical session on circular economy. Then on 11th Feb, we will be having a technical session on oceans and blue economy. And finally, a very important part of this is communique, building blocks and conclusion, which means that if the senior officials and representatives of the environment ministers have come together to discuss so many issues, it must lead towards something. What is that thing? That is the Environment and Climate Ministers' declaration or communique. So we are going to ask the G20 countries in this last session, what is it that you would like to see reflected in the communique or the declaration? That will give us a sense of what do they think are the most pressing climate and environmental issues on which the ministers must say something. So that's the discussion that we will already start on the third day. So this is about the Kalkere Arboretum. It actually shows in one place the 4 predominant forest ecosystems of Karnataka, and it will also show the forest restoration models that have been adopted in these ecosystems and how the faunal biodiversity in these areas has been revived. So all the 4 different types of key forest ecosystems of Karnataka can be seen at one place at this arboretum. And therefore the forestry officials, senior forestry officials of the ministry will be taking the G20 delegates to this arboretum. And as I mentioned, there would also be a visit to the Banerghatta National Park. It will showcase the state-of-the-art butterfly park and the animal safaris, as well as the flagship ecotourism model, which is the Jungle Lodges Resort. This is an opportunity when you have so many delegates from so many different countries coming together, as well as from international organizations. It's an opportunity for India to showcase its rich cultural and artistic heritage. Since this meeting is happening in Bangalore, in Bengaluru, so the rich legacy of the Karnataka handicrafts and textiles would be showcased. We would have pavilions. We would have an important pavilion on lifestyles for environment. We would also have a green heart that would display products made by women self-help groups. But Karnataka state itself would have certain pavilions, and there'll be a dance, Nadaswaram and flute recitals and dance performances also. Short ones, but they give an opportunity to the delegates to experience the art, the culture, the cuisines, and the experience of India. So thank you very much. That was the briefing from our end.
Thank you, Richa ji. That was very, very elaborate and detailed presentation, and I hope we are able to satisfy most of the queries which might have been coming to your mind about this meeting. Now the floor is open for question. If you have anything related to this G20 meeting, please ask. Yes. Can you give the mic there, please? And please introduce yourself also, from which organization you are from. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rajesh Kumar Singh. I'm from Bloomberg News. I was lucky enough to make it to this event. The question is, 2 questions basically. One, you talked about circularity in the steel sector. If you could elaborate a bit on that. Are we just talking about uses of scrap, or is there something else that you were pointing to? The other is, you were talking about end-of-life utilization of material. Those are not the only resources that the earth uses and the countries use. we use coal, we use aluminum bauxite, we use iron ore, and a whole lot of other materials. So, for countries like India and China, what kind of stance will we take when we talk about land degradation? Because all sorts of mining actually leads to degradation of land.
The stand that will be taken is economic activities are extremely important. Resource use is important. Resource extraction is also important. The question is, what are the sustainable ways of doing so? How to restore ecosystems when they get degraded, after resource extraction, but also about how to promote a circular economy in place of a linear economy. And you are right, the circular economy is not only pertaining to steel alone. It would apply to very many other systems as well. But in any G20 presidency, because we have to conclude our work in a couple of months really, and that is why certain thematic priorities are chosen. The steel has been chosen because you are aware that this is one of the hardest to abate sectors, which means that the emissions from steel, carbon emission is produced as a result of, it's a byproduct of the chemical process itself in the production of steel. So these are some of the hardest to abate emissions. India, as you are aware, has also launched a national hydrogen mission and is funding it significantly as well. So the potential use of hydrogen as a fuel, there will be several discussions. And by the way, this is also important to understand. Issues of this nature are being discussed across different working groups. Now, Bengaluru has already seen the conclusion of the first meeting of the Energy Transition Working Group. In the Energy Transition Working Group, they are talking about, in more detail than in the Environment Working Group, about fuels for the future, about this, hard to abate sectors, the technical innovations needed to reduce emissions therein. So issues are not limited only to the Environment Working Group. For us, the key focus really is on land degradation, biodiversity enhancement, on circular economy and resource efficiency in the sectors that we have mentioned. Marine litter is a very important factor in ocean pollution. Therefore, there's a whole lot of discussion which will happen on the third day on marine litter specifically. We will have presentations from the National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management. We will have presentations from INCOIS. We will have presentations from the German presidency, because at Hamburg they launched the framework of actions on marine plastic litter. So it's a detailed discussion that will happen on the issue of waste litter. So steel, we are touching upon it briefly, and one big technical study is being undertaken with a knowledge partner on steel, but steel is also being discussed in the Energy Transition Working Group. So that's how we have organized our work.
Can I ask a follow-up question, please? Just to be clear, we are also discussing emissions in the steel sector, right? We are also discussing emissions in the CO2 emissions in the steel sector, right? Not just how it extracts material from the earth, right?
Climate change is an issue which includes mitigation of emissions as well as adaptation to the impacts of climate change.
Sure.
And climate change is always discussed in the meetings of the ECSWG. So yes, climate change as a whole, including mitigation and adaptation, will come up for discussions. And we will discuss it in the context of steel. We will discuss it in the context of promoting circularity and in other ways. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
See, my question is restricted to India only first. We are talking about. I think we are. See, we are talking about environmental for the last decade, I think so. Now, coming to the states, particularly you take Karnataka, we have been telling that not to run transmission lines to the grid in the forest. It is being compromised and given permission always in Kodagu district, in Chikmagalur, everywhere. And other things, this dam construction, everything is happening. For example, your Joshimath, what's happening there. So how we inculcate that habit to the state governments to prevent these things. We have banned plastic, single-use plastic and so many things. It is being available everywhere, from nook and corner. What is happening? State governments are negligible about these actions. What action government is planning to take very seriously? Modi government is very serious about all natural things. But what the departments are doing is most concerned now.
So I would only respond to that by saying that the work in the Environment Climate Change Ministry is always, undertaken in coordination with the state governments. If we look at climate change, for example, whereas there is a national action plan for climate change, states are absolutely equal and very important partners in climate actions. So states are developing their state action plans on climate change to discuss within their geographic area how would they plan to mitigate emissions and adapt to climate change. On the issue of development projects, every country, including India, does assess the environmental impact of any planned project. And there's a very elaborate process of undertaking environmental impact assessments, of which you would be aware, and that is also being implemented in Karnataka. And we understand that there are always challenges between development and there are presumed there could be trade-offs, but it's very important that to adopt a sustainable development pathway, and that is what we intend to do, that we assess the development environmental impact of a development project and undertake measures to mitigate the adverse impacts in the course of development. So I would only say that the regime of environmental impact assessment is applicable throughout the country. There are state environmental impact assessment authorities as well as at the national level. There are EACs at the national level, but also at the state level. So I think that our work for the protection of climate and environment requires very close coordination of, and work of the center and the states together.
That we will just inform as and when it happens. We'll put the things in the group depending upon the situation and the times which the discussions take. So that we have made a group, WhatsApp group. We'll be informing in that whatever happens. Any more questions? So thank you, friends. Thank you for being here with us, and we look forward to your continued support for the next 3 days when we are in Bengaluru here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Please welcome all of us. All of you are welcome for the high tea. Please join us for the